welcome to Chore Chapters, because everyday tasks need good company. I'm Leo, and with me as always, we have got Luna.
Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today we've got a thrilling and interesting story lined up, so grab your headphones and let's dive straight into the story.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a truly pivotal event in American history.
The assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
Right. And the reason we're diving in now is this significant release, just recently, of previously classified documents.
Exactly. Documents related to what is, well, a persistently debated case.
It's huge. Tens of thousands of pages, right?
That's right. And while, the Warren Commission concluded long ago Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, our focus here isn't just about revisiting that conclusion.
Okay.
What's really compelling now is the sheer scale of these newly available or maybe newly uncensored records. Our mission really is to try and pull out the most intriguing parts.
Especially concerning the CIA.
Yes, particularly CIA activities and how they might impact the many questions still surrounding this historical tragedy.
It is a unique situation, isn't it? It's not a typical cold case because we have that official finding.
That's right.
But the public fascination, the scrutiny, it just never seems to fade. I mean, you think back to Oliver Stone's film, JFK.
Oh, yeah, back in the early 90s?
That really stirred things up again, didn't it? Sparked a lot of skepticism.
It certainly played a role in pushing for the JFK Records Act of 1992.
Right, the act. And that was driven by, well, a pretty consistent public demand for transparency.
Absolutely. And that demand, that act, has ultimately led us here to this moment where maybe the final layers of secrecy are being peeled back.
So the goal isn't necessarily finding a smoking gun, a new killer?
Not primarily, no. It's more about understanding the broader context, the hidden dynamics.
What was kept secret and why?
Exactly. And these declassified documents, particularly the ones shining a light on CIA covert ops, they offer a really valuable chance to, well, deepen our understanding of this critical point in history.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts then. These documents, released now in 2025. What's the process behind this final wave?
Well, the latest big release was March 2025. This came from a directive under President Trump using the JFK Records Act.
Okay.
This specific batch was 2,182 records. That adds up to about 63,400 pages. It's a lot. And the key thing is, this is supposed to be the final release mandated by that act. Many of these documents, you see, were technically available before, but large parts were blacked out.
Redacted.
Right, redacted, to protect intelligence sources, methods, that kind of thing. Now, a big chunk of these CIA-related records are public without those redactions for the first time.
So this isn't the first time we've seen JFK assassination documents declassified. It's been ongoing.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
There was the Assassination Records Review Board, the ARRB.
Right, I remember them.
They did a huge amount of work between 1994 and 1998.
Yeah.
The JFK Act actually set them up to oversee this whole process.
And they released millions of pages.
Millions from lots of different government agencies. Their hope, stated in their final report in 98, was that releasing this stuff would shed new evidentiary light, enrich the history, and
Restore public confidence.
help restore public confidence, exactly, in how the government handled the whole thing. So while the ARB finished its work back then, declassification has sort of trickled out since, leading up to this supposedly final big release.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. We're talking CIA. What specific covert operations are coming into sharper focus now with these uncensored documents, based on analysis from places like the National Security Archive?
Well, what's really insightful is the unprecedented look we're getting into CIA stuff, especially in Latin America.
Cuba, Mexico, areas central to the JFK story.
Precisely. Take the Family Jewels document. It's been known, but the unredacted version details activities exceeding the CIA's charter.
Exceeding their charter? Like what?
Well, for instance, a CIA counterespionage op right here in Washington, D.C., targeting the French embassy. It involved, and this is quoted, breaking and entering and the removal of documents from the French consulate.
Breaking and entering a friendly embassy. Wow.
Yeah. It wasn't just intel gathering. It's a significant breach. And it highlights a time when the CIA seemed to operate with, well, a lot of autonomy. Maybe not full oversight from the White House.
That's a pretty big overreach. What else from the Family Jewels uncensored might raise eyebrows?
It also gives a bit more light on DCI John McConey's dealings with the Vatican.
The Vatican.
Yeah, interactions with both Pope John Paul III and Pope Paul VI. The exact details are still a bit murky, but the document itself says these dealings could and would raise eyebrows in some quarters.
Suggesting they were sensitive. Or maybe controversial?
Potentially. Something beyond just standard diplomatic chats, it seems.
And it wasn't just Europe, right? You mentioned Latin America being key.
Very much so. The uncensored records now include the CIA Inspector General's report on the 1961 assassination of Rafael Trujillo.
The Dominican Republic dictator.
That's him. And this report is significant because it now names the CIA officers and others who directly helped in that assassination plot.
We're seeing names now that were blacked out before?
Exactly. That level of explicit detail about direct CIA involvement in overthrowing foreign leaders, it tells you a lot about the agency's reach and tactics back then.
So knowing who within the agency was involved in those kinds of things, that feels like a step towards real transparency.
It is. And there's more. Summaries of briefings by DCI McCone to the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board, PFIAB.
They advised the president on intelligence.
Correct. Those summaries are now fully unredacted. They give more detail on known CIA political action programs, but also reveal stuff we didn't know before, specifically the agency's covert financial support to political parties in the fight against communism globally.
So secret funding of political parties around the world.
Yes, it gives us a much clearer picture of just how big these CIA influence operations were during the Cold War, how deeply involved they were trying to shape politics everywhere.
It really paints a picture of the CIA as this massive, often hidden force on the world stage.
I think that's a fair way to put it. The release also has a CIA Inspector General report specifically on the CIA station in Mexico City.
Mexico City. That's crucial because of Oswald, right?
Exactly. Oswald was there shortly before the assassination, as you know. So this report gives a detailed, kind of on-the-ground view of how the CIA operated in that specific location.
Which could offer insights into whether Oswald was on their radar, or if maybe CIA activities somehow cross paths with his.
Potentially, yes. That Mexico City connection has always been, well, a hotbed of speculation. Maybe this report adds some concrete facts.
Any other regions or specific operations highlighted in these final documents?
We're also seeing a broader history of CIA operations in the Western Hemisphere, covering roughly 1946 to 1965.
So context.
Right. Context like spending details for CIA stations in various Latin American countries, specifics on payments, influence operations, like in Bolivia, where they worked to get General René Barrientos elected. It helps understand their long-term game in the region.
Okay, and Cuba itself, obviously central, especially with Operation Mongoose trying to destabilize Castro.
Absolutely central. And here's something quite striking. One declassified document dated April 24th, 1963. So months before the assassination.
Okay.
It reveals that 14 Cuban diplomats were actually CIA agents.
14 Cuban diplomats working for the CIA.
Yes, and even more, it says 2 Cuban ambassadors were on the CIA payroll, providing what the document calls first-rate reports, insights right from Castro's inner circle, apparently.
That's astonishing, that level of penetration.
It really is. And when you connect that to Operation Mongoose, the big push to undermine Castro's government, it just underscores how deep the CIA was in Cuba and how many Cubans, as agents, were involved in those efforts.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? With that level of infiltration, the potential for things going wrong, unintended consequences.
Exactly. Miscalculations, blowback.
Yeah.
It opens up a lot of possibilities to consider.
That level of insight into the Cuban government naturally leads to the next big question. President Kennedy's own relationship with CIA. Did these documents shed any more light on that reported wariness between JFK and the agency?
That's a really key question. The Harvard Gazette actually asked historian Frederick Lodgevall about this.
Yeah.
Well, his initial take was that while it's possible, something might still be buried in those thousands of pages.
Right.
He hadn't yet seen explicit new details really confirming or elaborating on that wariness. But he did acknowledge, like most historians do, that some tension definitely existed.
For various reasons, as the outline put it. Bay of Pigs, maybe?
Yeah, the Bay of Pigs fiasco is often cited. Kennedy certainly felt the CIA hadn't handled that well, and it undoubtedly created friction, maybe some distrust.
It's often painted as this major conflict, almost a war between the White House and the CIA. Did the documents suggest it was that deep?
Lodgevall seemed to suggest that maybe some accounts have exaggerated the depth and width of the schism, as he put it.
Okay, so maybe more nuanced?
Perhaps. But even if it wasn't all-out war, the fact that any level of distrust or, differing agendas might have existed between the president and his main intelligence agency, that's crucial context.
Crucial for understanding the lead up to Dallas. Did that tension affect how information flowed or cooperation on key issues?
Those are exactly the kinds of questions these documents might help us explore further, even without a smoking gun memo saying JFK distrusted the CIA.
Okay, so let's just step back for a second. To give you, the listener, some context, what was the bigger picture historically when the assassination happened? What helps us understand why these CIA revelations might matter so much?
Well, it was such a critical time in the Cold War. You have to remember, this was right after the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Edge of nuclear war.
Absolutely. Global tensions were sky high, and U.S. involvement in Vietnam was deepening. Then there's Oswald himself.
His defection to the Soviet Union, his pro-Castro stand.
Right, which initially made people think maybe Moscow or Havana was involved, though official inquiries later dismissed that.
And domestically?
Domestically, the civil rights movement was causing huge social and political shifts. And Dallas, as we know, had a very conservative kind of anti-Kennedy political vibe at the time.
So a really complex, volatile mix of factors.
Exactly, all swirling around when the assassination happened. And it all continues to shape how we try to interpret the event and, well, everyone's possible motives.
So given these potential CIA threads and this complex history, let's touch briefly on some of those key pieces of evidence and the controversies that just won't go away. How might these new CIA details inform how we, or you, the listener, think about them now?
Well, take the Warren Commission's finding. Oswald acted alone. That's always faced a lot of public skepticism, right?
Definitely.
Then later, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, the HSCA, in '79, found a probable conspiracy.
But they couldn't name names.
Right. And they actually said the Soviet and Cuban governments, the Secret Service, FBI, CIS organizations were likely not involved. But now, with these new details about just how extensive CIA operations were, especially in Cuba and Mexico, areas directly linked to Oswald, you, the listener, might reasonably ask, did the HSCA really have the full picture back then?
Did the agency fully disclose everything they knew? About their own ops, about people connected to Oswald?
It certainly makes you wonder.
What about specific things like the single bullet theory?
The magic bullet, Commission Exhibit 399. The idea that one bullet hit both Kennedy and Governor Connolly multiple times.
And came out looking almost pristine.
Exactly. That's always been tough for people to swallow. Now, these CIA documents won't change the ballistics, obviously.
No.
But knowing more about the CIA's vast network, their involvement in, let's say, unconventional actions in the region, it might just prompt you to reconsider if all potential scenarios and actors were really explored back then. Could others, maybe tied to these CIA ops, have been involved?
It widens the lens, perhaps. And the Zapruder film, the witness accounts.
Yeah, the Zapruder film, that backward head snap, still fuels debate about where the shots came from. Those are a shot from the front, the grassy knoll.
Which many eyewitnesses reported hearing shots from.
Right. Separate from Oswald's supposed perch in the book depository. When you lay these long-standing questions alongside the new info about CIA activities, about potential hidden players, you might wonder if the official investigations really squared all that conflicting evidence.
And there was the Hosty note, too, wasn't there? The FBI note from Oswald that got destroyed.
Yes, the Hosty note. Its destruction always raises questions. What did the FBI know about Oswald beforehand? Was that info shared properly? Understood.
More questions. And the autopsy discrepancies.
Also a factor. The differences between what doctors at Parkland Hospital initially saw versus the official autopsy findings later at Bethesda Naval Hospital regarding the wounds. It adds to the suspicion for some that the medical record might not be complete or accurate.
It's clear that despite official conclusions, there's just a lot of enduring doubt and unanswered questions for many people, including you listening now. Finally, I'm curious. Why do you think this event, the JFK assassination, remains such fertile ground for conspiracy theories? You see them everywhere. Wikipedia documents tons of them.
That's a really complex question. I think part of it is just a basic human need for meaning, for understanding, especially when something so huge and traumatic happens.
The idea that one lone person could change history so drastically.
It can feel unsatisfying, maybe even frightening. Conspiracy theories often offer a more complex story, one that seems to make more sense of the chaos, even if it involves hidden, powerful groups.
It imposes an order, maybe?
Perhaps. There's also a psychological need for control. Blaming a secret group might feel, oddly, less random and more understandable than just accepting a seemingly senseless act.
And when the official story has holes or contradictions.
That creates a vacuum, doesn't it? Alternative theories rush in. And then you have cognitive biases. We tend to look for information that confirms what we already believe and ignore stuff that challenges it.
Confirmation bias.
Exactly. It all feeds into why these theories persist.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together for you, the listener. What's the main takeaway from this deep dive into these newly declassified documents in the JFK assassination?
I think the crucial point is that these uncensored documents give us significant, genuinely new details about CIA covert operations around the time of the assassination.
Especially in key places like Cuba and Mexico.
Right, and concerning individuals relevant to the whole narrative. Now, do these revelations definitively answer the conspiracy question? No.
But they add context.
They add vital context, and they're absolutely going to fuel more analysis of the assassination itself and also of how thorough and transparent the investigations really were. This new info lets us see that complex geopolitical landscape and the secret activities within it with, well, maybe slightly clearer eyes.
And ultimately, like we said at the start, the search isn't just about finding a new gunman, maybe. It's about getting a fuller picture, a deeper understanding of all the forces at play.
Pursuing the truth of that moment, yes.
And considering the extent of these covert activities we now know more about.
Exactly. And this leads to a final thought, really, for you, the listener. Thinking about the scale of these hidden operations, what implications might that have for how we understand the whole political climate back then in the early 60s? What's the potential for hidden influences shaping huge historical events? And maybe more personally, what further questions do these declassified records spark for you as you reflect on this enduring American tragedy?
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us out. Until next time, take care and keep your chores company.